Discussing today, we are in the midst of the mitzvah of SEFIRAS HAOMER, and it's just natural that we dedicate at least one shir to Inyana Diyayma. And the topic we'll be discussing today is Noshim b'SEFIRAS HAOMER. When I connected, I just heard my dear friend Reb Shlomo quoting the Mishnah Brura, Shulchan Shlomo, B'medinas elu loi nahagu noshim lavorech. So let's start from the most fundamental question: are noshim chayiv? Whether noyagim, loi noyagim, are noshim chayiv? The Rambam makes it very clear in Hilchos Tmidin v'Musafim. And in a few minutes, I will address the question: why does the Rambam write the halachas of SEFIRAS HAOMER and Hilchos Tmidin v'Musafim? Sometimes I humorously say, if the Rambam would turn to me and the Rambam would tell me, Rabbi Weiss, I went through the entirety of Kol HaTorah Kulo and I decreed every halacha, which is an amazing feat. Nobody did it before the Rambam, no individual. Very few did it after the Rambam. But those that came after the Rambam had the Rambam to rely on. So the Rambam would turn to me. I say this with a touch of humor, and we'd say, I don't need you to help me bebidder halacha. I also decided that Kol HaTorah Kula fits into 14 categories, which is an amazing godless into itself. You Dalet Svorim of the Mishnah Torah. Just do me a technical favor. Just, put the halachas each where it belongs. My text, don't add on one word. Don't subtract one word. Just arrange it, organize it. Well, I would probably put all the dinam of SEFIRAS HAOMER and SEFIRAS Mani together with other mitzvahs shebedebe, between Pesach and Shvius. The Rambam puts it in Hilchos Tmidin v'Musafim, which is Kodshim, which is Karbonos. We'll get to that in a moment. But so let's see the Rambam. Mitzvah say lispa sheva Shabbos tmimis miyom avos away mishanem rasfat le'av malchus Shabbos. Mitzvah limnas hayomim ima shivoi shenem etis b'rei chamishim yom u'metchilas hayomim moino lefichach moino balaylo mishisha oso benisin. And then the Rambam goes on. Mitzvah zol kolish miyasol uvechol mokem uvechol zman v'noshim v'avodem ptirim mimeno. And every night we say a bracha. So the Rambam maintains SEFIRAS HAOMER is min haTorah v'zman hazeh. Why are women exempt? Kesef Mishnah this part says women are exempt. Mashe kosev noshim v'avodem pturim mishim de mitzvah hazeh shazman gromahu poshut. Mogen Avram, very first Sif Cotton. So Siman Tov Peites is Dinei SEFIRAS HAOMER. All the mitzvahs of SEFIRAS HAOMER are 9 seifim. 9 seifim. Seif 10 is Chodosh. So the Mogen Avram, Sif Cotton Aleph, also says, Nosham Ptiris SEFIRAS HAOMER. The Rambam mitzvahs say, Shazman Groma. V'chein hu b'Zohar HaKodesh. So the Mogen Avram quotes the Zohar and the Rambam. And the Mogen Avram explains, why are Noshim Potter? We had the Mogen Avram on the screen a moment ago. Noshim Potter because it's a mitzvah say, Shazman Groma. However, along comes the Ramban, and the Ramban is really a mystery. The Ramban is a gewaltige chiddush. So the Mogen Avram says, Shaviu alei chayva. We'll get to that in a few minutes, but let's see the Ramban. The Ramban maintains that Noshim are chayiv because SEFIRAS HAOMER is a mitzvah say, she'ein hazman garama. Have Yodea. The high Tana Kitona Eza Mrs. Seisha as Mangroma, Kigon Sukkah, the Eza Mrs. Seisha Law as Mangroma, Kigon Mezuzah, Tona v'Shaya, and Tona v'Shaya both. The Rambam is talking about the Mishnah in Kedusha Lamed Aleph. Tona v'Shaya mitzvah to say she'ein zman groma. Tona v'Shaya mitzvah to say she'zman groma. Last three lines that we have on the screen. Ube mitzvah to say she'ein zman groma shayir tuvo. Moira v'kavoid. It means moira v'kavoid av. Bikurim, Chala, Kisyadam, Reshus Egez, Matonois, Usfiras Uoimer. So the Ramban clearly says, Sfiras Uoimer, Mitzvahs Hasei, She'eina Zman Grama, and everybody wonders. Why is Mitzvahs Hasei, She'eina Zman Grama, Sfiras Uoimer? Is there any more compelling Zman Grama? A few different interpretations. Avnei Nezer, Shin Pei Dalet. The Avnei Nezer is always a mechadish, a revolutionary. The Avnei Nezer was the Sachat Shevelevi, one of the greatest Gedolim of his era, a Gavaldige Ilui. He made a mapecha in the Derech HaLimud in Poland. So the Avnei Nezer says that kol sheyeshnoi bebal toichel chometz yeshnoi bekum achol matzo. And just like Noshe Marchayev in Mississippi Yisnasayim, Moror, it is not only kum achol matzo, the same would refer to Sfiras HaOmer because Sfiras HaOmer starts second day of Pesach. The Avnei Nezer is problematic for two reasons. Reason number one, according to the Avnei Nezer, the reason women are chayev is because kol sheyeshna b'shoma yeshna b'zochor, kol sheyeshna b'baltoichel chumetz yeshna b'kum achol matzeh. But that is not what the Ramban says. We saw the Ramban a moment ago, and the Ramban clearly says the reason noshim are chayev is because it is mitzvahs asay she'ein hazman grama, just like all the other examples that the Ramban brings. One reason. Second reason, yes, the Zman of Sfiras HaOmer starts the second day Pesach, but it definitely is not a mitzvah of Chag HaMatzos. Only 6 out of the 49 days of Sfira Pesach. It's just a technicality. It starts second day Pesach HaKrovas HaOmer. It has nothing to do with kol sheyeshno bebaltoichel chometz yeshno bekum achol matz. The truth is that this Avnei Nezer is very ambiguous. It's not very clear. Not always does the Avnei Nezer explain himself thoroughly. But that is one mahalach. And I just want to note, Zohar HaKodesh Pashas Tetzaveh Mefurish Noshim Turas V'Sfiras HaOmer U'Mefarish Otam Al Derech Hasod. We'll get to the Zohar in a few minutes. I myself wrote in my sefer, I don't know whether we could have the Minchas Osher on the screen or not. I wrote a mahalach in Minchas Osher, so I don't know whether we have it or not. It is in Minchas Osher Chelek Gimel, Simen Lamed Tes. We don't have it on the screen, I'll just explain. And it is somewhat nuanced. I hope I will be able to explain it as best as I can. Mitzvahs Asay Shazman Grama are mitzvahs practically, theoretically, we could be Mekayim these mitzvahs in any other time. It is only Gezeres HaKosav Din Torah. This is the time and no other. For instance, tzitzis. Tzitzis is a mitzvah Asay Shazman Grama because it's noeg b'yoyim v'loy b'layla. One could wear tzitzis by night, But the Torah says there is no mitzvah to wear tzitzis by night. Matzah and moror. One could eat matzah and moror Purim, Rosh Hashanah, but it's not a mitzvah. Sukkah and lulav. No, not Shabbos or Chuvas. Minchas Osha Moyadim. I'll explain it. It probably will take time to look for it. Not so important. You could look for it later. Anybody that wants to learn it, in the fundamental text, it is Minchas Osha Moyadim Chela Gimel Simin Lamed Tet. But I think I could explain it as good as the Minchas Osha. So just listen to me. We don't need the text. Matzah and moror, you could eat matzah and moror and Purim. The Torah says that's not the time. Dalad Minim. You could take a lulav on Tisha B'Av. That's not the time. Sukkos, no other time. Sukkah, theoretically, you can sit in the Sukkah Yom Kippur, Seres Yomei Tshuva. Because that's not the time. But the mitzvah of SEFIRAS is to count specific days. You need to count the days from Tet Zayin Nisan to Vav Sivan. Those are the days and no others. You can't count days only when those days are here. If you could find those days in Chodesh Tishrei or in Adar, go ahead, look for them. So the reason you cannot count those days only between Pesach and Shavuos is because that is the only time of the year that those days are available, that they're here. You cannot count something that is non-existent. So what I mean to argue is Zman Karama is only when, in the abstract, theoretically, you could perform this same mitzvah any other time. It is only a Gzeres HaKosav. Because Baruch Hu tells us, I don't want you to do this any other time. This is the time. That is Zman Karama. The mitzvah of SEFIRAS is not just counting 49 days. There are specific days that we need to count. And those are the days from Tet Zayin Nisan to Hey Sivan. You can only count the days when they're here. You cannot count something that you don't see, that is not here. I know that it's difficult to grasp what I say, so I want to give you a mashal. A person has precious stones, gems, and he has a big heap, diamonds, rubies, sapphires, emeralds. Those are the only four I know. So I apologize. It's not my line of business. So he has a big heap of precious stones and he wants to count diamonds. They look similar. They're all gems. They're all precious stones. But he wants to count diamonds and not the others. Every day has its own essence. Some days are diamonds, some days are emeralds, some days are sapphires. Avram, Zokin, Bobi, Yomim. Each day is like no other. And the mitzvah is to count these days. Go ahead. Try to count them any other time of the year. It's impossible. It's not shaykh because they're not apparent. They're not available any other time of the year. That is not Zman Karama. I try to find a better way to explain, but I hope I'm making myself clear because to me this photo seems to be so clear and so logical. Mitzvah Seisha Zman Karama is a mitzvah which theoretically you could have done this very same act any other time. But that's the Gzeres HaKosav. I wanted to do now and not any other time. But it is impossible to count these days any other time of the year because the mitzvah is to count these days. Every day is unique and different than others. That would be my interpretation of the Rambam. I don't know why no one says it. But let's go back to the Divrei Yecheskel. He says something similar, but easier to grasp. So let's go back to the Divrei Yecheskel. The Divrei Yecheskel was a Talmud of Reb Chaim Brisker, Reb Cheskel Borenstein. He was a Rosh Yeshiva in Slobodka, not in the Slobodki Yeshiva, the famous Slobodki Yeshiva, but it's an amazing sefer, a very kosher sefer. The Divrei Yecheskel, as well as Rabbi Yerucham Fishel Perlo. And I need to say 2 words about the Rav Perlo because he was an amazing Ilui. He was not a Toifus Yeshiva. He was not a Klei Kodesh at all, neither a Rav nor a Rosh Yeshiva. And that was unique about the Polish Torah Jewry. He was an amazing Ilui. And he actually wrote SEFIRAS Mitzvos LeRabbeinu Sadia Gaon. Whenever I quote Perlo, I quote and I say, SEFIRAS Mitzvos LeRasag Shechiber Rabbi Yerucham Fishel Perlo. Because the Rasag did not intend to write the SEFIRAS Mitzvos. Rabbeinu Sadia Gaon, like many early Sephardi giants, was a Ish Eshkolos, Paitan, Mishorer, great philosopher, Rosh Yeshiva. He was everything. Everything a Gadol B'Yisrael could be. And he wrote a shir in rhymes, in charuzim, like a piyut, on Taryag mitzvahs, dedicating 1 line or a half a line, 3 or 4 words to each mitzvah. Came along Rabbi Yerucham Fishel Perlo in pre-Holocaust years, 100 years ago, a young Polish Ilui. And he expanded and expounded and elaborated and analyzed. He took a song and he turned it into a SEFIRAS Mitzvos. That's the greatness of Rabbi Yerucham Fishel Perlo. In his Mavoi, in his introduction, he comes up with the same spot as the Divrei Yecheskel. And what they both say is this. SEFIRAS HAOMER is not a mitzvah seishes man groma. It does not depend on time. It depends on the Korban Omer. And the Korban Omer depends on time. So SEFIRAS HAOMER is associated with time, with a time framework, but that is indirectly. It is not direct. SEFIRAS HAOMER depends on the Korban Omer, which they were makar first day Pesach. And after the Korban Omer, Osfartem lachem memochras Shabbos miyoyma v'yachem es Omer atenufa, Shabbos istiyeno. So SEFIRAS HAOMER is not associated with time. SEFIRAS HAOMER is associated with the Korban Omer. Memochras Shabbos miyoyma v'yachem es Omer atenufa. It is the Korban that is associated with time. And that is why SEFIRAS HAOMER is not defined as Zman Gra. In my sefer on Moedim,
if the Rav wants, we can see I Stalid the Divrei Yecheskel.
Okay. Yes, I think it would. Yeah.
Pesach, move it down. There we are.
Yeah,
I Stalid.
We have it. So first he quotes the Rambam and the Chinuch that Noshim are potur, and then he quotes the Ramban. And he explains, Yesh loime the svira leil Ramban, the hoda moine miyoim tezayim benisan eino mitzad etzem azman, shehu ha'machayev b'mitzvah the SEFIRAS HAOMER, kemo tezvov nisan the machayev b'matzah, no. Ela mishum dechsuv b'kro osfartem lachem emochus hashamas miyoim aviyachem es Omer atenufo. אילו הויו זמן אבוס או אוימר ביום אחר, גם כן היום מחייבינן בסבירה ביום אחר. נמצא דמה שספירס HAOMER יש לו זמן קבוע, אינו אלו מצד ההכרח, ולא מצד זמנוי בעצמותו. I think I explained it very well, maybe clearer even than the Divrei Yecheskel, and the same idea is found in Rav Fishel Perlo, in his Mavo, to the Sefer HaMitzvahs Lerasad. So, this is the Le'inyan Sefiras HaOimer, V'mikra Bikurim.
It's the next page, or Pesach, the next page. Next, keep on going. Yeah, here it is.
Okay. La'acharu iyun nera, sheyesh shoresh lezeh. Ma shechoseh Rambam bikurim. Bikurim is zman groma, eina noeg elo min hatzeres ad Chanukah. So the thought of an official parallel is, some mitzvahs are only shayach, only noeg in a certain time frame. But that is because they are dependent on phenomena or on another mitzvah, which is restricted in time. So the reason Bikurim is min hatzeres ad Chanukah, that is when the new fruit blossoms, comes to be. I'll give you another example. Kiddush Levona. It's not in our sources. But on Kloli HaMitzvahs, Minchas Osher Kloli HaMitzvahs Siman Chof Ches. I wrote about this at great length. The Mogen Avraham Tov Chavov says Kiddush Levona, Noshem Turis, because it's Zman Groma. Reb Shlomo Kluge disagrees. And Reb Shlomo Kluge says, well, Kiddush Levona is only knowing the beginning of the month. But that is because Kiddush Levona, we say Haraya Levona Bichidusho. If a Kodesh Baruch would make a miracle, and the Levona would be Neschadesh, Chof Hei B'Chodesh, we'll say Kiddush Levona Chof Hei B'Chodesh. So Kiddush Levona is not defined by time. We say Kiddush Levona, Haraya Levona Bichidusho. The fact is, she'ein halavona mischadeshes only at the beginning of the month. So we have three examples. Bikurim, Kiddush Levona, Sefiras HaOimer. So the official parallel and Rebbe Cheskel Borstein, both were contemporaries. One in Slobodka, the other in Varsha, but they both come up with the same idea. What is most significant, it is only in our generation, 20 years ago, that a sefer was printed, Koivit Shittis Kamoi, on Kedushin and Bava Kama, and we have a tshuva from Reb Moshe Chalava. He was the son of Maharam Chalava. Reb Menachem Chalava was a Talmud of the Ramban. And he quotes his father explaining the Ramban clearly, exactly like the Divrei Yecheskel and Rabbi Yerucham official parallel. Do we have it on the screen? Source number 8, the sources that I sent. Maram Chalavo, HaRav Adoni Ovi Kosav, the Sefiras HaOimer Noshim Chayavois. Haramban Kosav, Sefiras HaOimer Noshim Chayavois, V'chein Ikar. Do you people hear me or see me? Because I don't see you.
I'm sorry, Rabbi. We don't have that Maramakom.
Okay, but that is a very important Maramakom. So maybe you'll get it later. So the Ramban clearly says, and I'm quoting, Loma matinen elo shazman groma, Sefiras HaOimer ein gorem lo yazman, elo hamaisa, dahainu hakrovas HaOimer, v'yafal pi shu Oimer toli b'zman, makol mokom hamispor, einoi toli elo b'masa hakrova, v'lo hazman groma. So this is amazing. What we see here is, these achrayim were machaven la'amita shel Torah das HaRamban. Personally, I'm a bit disappointed why the Ramban didn't adopt my sword. Okay? That's the way it is. I think my explanation is a sound one. To me, it's very appealing. But the Ramban, as quoted by one of his own Talmidim, as quoted by his Talmid's son, Rav Moshe Chalava, quoting Rabbi Nachman bar Rava, who was a Talmid of the Ramban, and he says exactly what the Divrei Cheskel and official parallels say. Sfiras HaOmer is not directly associated with time. It is associated with the Korban. The Korban is defined in a certain time frame, but not the mitzvah of Sfira. But I want to complicate matters a bit. Could we go back to the Rambam? First source, we started this year today. It's a machlokes rishonim with the Sfiras HaOmer b'zman hazeh and HaTorah midrabanan. Most of the poskim, including the Beis Yosef, maintain Sfiras HaOmer b'zman hazeh derabanan, because when there's no korban, there's no chiyuv of Sfira. But Dafka the Rambam maintains it's a chiyuv d'oraisa b'zman hazeh, which proves that it is not dictated by the korban. So obviously, the Ramban and the Rambam don't go together. Mitzvah Chav Daled on our screen, Mitzvah Zu, Al Kol Ish Miyasor, B'Kol Mokom, B'Kol Zman. So according to the Rambam L'Shitosoi. Why are Noshim Poter? Because there is Man Garama. It's not dictated by the Korban. It's Min HaTorah, even B'Zman Hazeh. So Rambam L'Shitosoi. The Rambam maintains Sfiras HaOmer is Min HaTorah B'Zman Hazeh. There is no Korban Moima. So obviously it is associated directly with time. But on the other hand, I want to go back to the first comment in today's shir. But the Rambam does write the dinam of Sfiras HaOmer and to me then umusofim, not in Sefer Zmanim. So maybe even according to the Rambam, it is associated with the Korban, not necessarily with the practical Havas HaKorban. It is associated with the time of the Korban. So even B'Zman Hazeh, when there is no Beis HaMikdash and there are no Korbanos, Sfiras HaOmer is still Min HaTorah. And that would bring us to Dakim Shebedakim, nuance Shebenuance. Sfiras HaOmer isn't directly associated with time. The Korban is associated with time. Sfiras HaOmer is associated with the time of the Korban, not necessarily the Hakrav of the Korban, because there is no Korban B'Zman Shem Beis HaMikdash, and Sfiras HaOmer is Min HaTorah, but still, the time of Mitzvah Sfira is the time of Korban Omer. One more source, and the reason I quote this source is because of Hashkafa. So I don't know whether we have it on the screen. Divrei Malkiel. The Divrei Malkiel, I quoted him in my Sefer. The Divrei Malkiel was the Malkiel Tenenbaum, the Rav of Lamshe. And he writes, regarding the Ramban, Masha Kosav Katar, Kvoi Teros El Etmoin Ramban B'Chidushim L'Kedushin, Yofe Toma, V'Poshet Sheyesham To Soifer. Wow. Poshet Sheyesham To Soifer. I don't know whether we can have the Ramah, Reish Ayin Tessi, Aleph and Yeridea on our screen. So the Divrei Malkiel says the Ramban makes no sense. Poshet Sheyesham To Soifer. Are you familiar with the concept of Bucher Zetzer? The Bucher Zetzer was the young Jewish Amaretz working in the printing press. And whenever we had a problem, something we didn't understand, we always threw it on the Bucher Zetzer. This is what the Divrei Malkiel does right here and now. He says, oh, it's clear to me that this is a mistake. Sfiras HaOmer definitely is man grama, noshim pturois. So obviously, it was written in the original text, Samach Ayin, and Samach Ayin means Seder Avodah. Akrovis Karbonos. Some stupid boy thought Samach Ayin is Sfiras Oimer. Or maybe it was Mem Ayin. And Mem Ayin means Matnas of Yoinim. And the Mem was confused with the Samach. And Matonas of Yoinim became Sfiras Oimer. There are more rights in Siman Reish Ayin Tesif Aleph and Yeredeya. Also Lahagia Svorim without a riot. And they go in there and Biragro writes in Aveire Gedoyla. Some Gedolim have this tendency. We have a problem, we have a kasha. Instead of breaking your mind, looking for an explanation, you say to us that first, Samachayin, Memayin, Matonas Savyonim, say that Avoido. I think it's obvious in the previous source we just learned. Maram Chalava, Talmud of the Ramban, quoting the Ramban as is, and giving a very reasonable explanation in the Svara of the Ramban. Okay. Oh, I'm glad we have it. So, let us have a look.
Which Marmuk?
Just one moment.
We don't have the Ram Chalava.
No. I think we have Reish Ayin. I am looking for Reish Ayin Tet. What we see on the screen is Reish Ayin. Okay. Let's have a look. The first Sifra Ve'ein lahagia shum sefer al pi asvora ki im beraye brure sheyesh bo tos. The Ramo says, Ein lahagia shum sefer al pi asvora. Only beraye brure sheyesh bo tos. Could we have the Biragro on this spot? The Biragro is...
He quotes Rav David Cohen.
What?
Ramo quotes Rav David Cohen.
The Radak is one of the famous Kadmonim. He was one generation before the Ramo, the Radak. So if we can have the Bir Hagra, so the Radak writes it's a Cherem HaKadmonim. And I think the Ken Kosev Aramban, because of Sham Sharab Mochako.
Start again.
Svorim besvora aveire gemura v'raui lenadois oleo. That's harsh language. And what is very significant, he quotes the Ramban. And the Divra Malkiel wants the Magia in the Ramban al pi svora. And what we just saw is the Divra Malkiel was a great gadol. It is a mistake because when we see Maharam Chalava quoting his Rebbe, the Ramban, as we find in Ramban, and he gives a svara and an explanation, and Divrei Yecheskel, Reb Fisher Perlo came up on their own with this explanation, so obviously the Divra Malkiel wasn't right. Ein lahagia shum sefer al pi svara, like the Ramo writes, quoting the Radak, and the Goen quotes, Averi Gedoyla. Well, that is harsh language. So after all this analysis, which I hope was very interesting, let's get to Halacha Lamaisa.
We found the Maram Chalava.
Okay, amazing. I think it'll be a Te'elis if we can have it on our screen, because his language is so clear, clearer than the official Pelo and the Divrei Yecheskel. Okay, scroll down. HaRav Adoni Ovi Kosa. Svias Oy Menoshim Chayavois. Bezer Shone Bechidusho. And we scroll down a bit more and we find the quoting the Ramban. Chuvas VaHaRamban Kosa. Svias Oy Menoshim Chayavois. Bechein Ikar. The Loma Matina Leshazman Grom. Svias Oy Ein Godem Lezman. Ero Amaisa. The Haino Akrodas Oymel. ואף על פי שאוהמת תולה בזמן, מכל המקום המספר, איני תולה לבמייס הקרובה, ולא הזמן גורמת. And that is very clear. He gives a moshel. One could argue against the moshel, but he says, Noshim chayavas bebeches amazon. Would somebody argue, Shabbos, you have a chiyuv to eat. And therefore, beches amazon Shabbos would be zman grama. No. Eating is associated with Shabbos, but beches amazon is not associated with Shabbos. So, what I mean to say is, Rabbi Cheskel Borstein from Slobodka, the official fellow from Varsha, there was Zoich Halacham and Adas HaRambam. And this is the Ramban, Lo Kediva Demakil, and the Ramban doesn't write my svara, but I still think what I suggested is Misyashav al Alev, Botlodati. So I want to get to Halacha Lamaisa. First of all, Das and Mekubori. Kaf HaChaim, many others write, Al Pi Kabbalah, Noshim should not say Sviras Weimer. I'm not a great Mekubal, but I disagree. And I might say, if I quoted the Zohar is in two different sources, Pashas Emer and Pashas Pinchas. And the Zohar explains Al Pi Kabbalah why Noshim are exempt from Sviras Weimer. For some reason, later Bali Kabbalah understood from the Zohar that Noshim should not count Sviras Weimer. And I totally disagree for a very simple reason. The Magen Avraham quotes the Zohar. And the Magen Avraham, many people aren't aware of this. The Beis Yosef is the one that brought the Zohar into the field of halacha. And the Magen Avraham did the same with Kisvei Ha'ari. And up to the Beis Yosef, great poskim didn't quote the Zohar. The Zohar was Kabbalah, nothing to do with halacha. The Beis Yosef, many halachas in Shulchan Aruch are based on Zohar. I wrote a very significant tshuva which was not yet printed. It should be printed in the next volume, There are almost 100 sources in which the Beis Yosef quotes the Zohar. And the times the Magen Avraham quotes Kisvei Ari, also almost limitless. So the Magen Avraham quotes the Zohar, and nevertheless he says, Kibro Aleim Chayva. So it's a stira b'nei Bay in the Magen Avraham. And to me, all we find in Zohar is another explanation why Noshim are potu. But it's not osu. And anybody that's boki, even a beginner in Kabbalah, knows that this is commonplace. Chazal say one reason for a specific halacha, and Kabbalah comes up with different rationale and different reasons. That doesn't mean it's a machlokes between Kabbalah and halacha. So all we find in the Zohar is that Noshim aren't shayach by these mitzvahs because they are duchra and not nukra. So what? The Zohar gives another explanation why Noshim are potul, but just like Al Pi halacha, they could perform these mitzvahs k'misha'enim and tzuvaloisa. The same Al Pi Kabbalah. Who am I to argue with the Ben Ish Chai, with the Kaf HaChaim? But all I say is the Magen Avraham quotes the Zohar. And the Magen Avraham didn't see in the Zohar any reason that women cannot count. They're potter, but they could. And therefore, I say there is no reason women shouldn't say Sviras Weimer. And now, let's get to the Mishnah group. The Magen Avraham says, Kibro Aleim Chayva. The Mishnah Berurah writes, Bimekoy Moiseinu. Women don't count. Definitely not as a chiyuv. And that's the Mishnah Berurah Tov Peites Sif Cotton Gimel.
Basically, if you can put up the Mishnah Berurah, it's a small piece, but it's worth seeing.
So the Mishnah Berurah writes, I wonder, usually halacha is dictated by the Magen Avraham, especially for Bnei Ashkenaz. So, once again, we're Tov Tzaddik Gimel. We need Tov Peitet. What we have on the screen is Tov Tzaddik Gimel. Tov Peitet is Dinei Sviras HaOmer. Not Dvorim HaNoegim B'Yamei HaOmer, but Sviras HaOmer. Okay. Sif Cotton Gimel, Mishnah Berurah. Because what we have, I think what we have is the Shulchan Aruch. Let's go to the Mishnah Berurah.
Yeah, we're going to get there in a second.
Scroll up. Up. You're scrolling down. We need to go up.
Going the other way or Pesach, Gimel. Gimel. Here we go.
Here we are. V'noshim v'avodem turas v'mitzizuzah v'mitzizteisha zman groma. V'kos v'magon rom kol kibru alayim choyvo. Ukimedumad b'medino yiseinu lo inahagi no sheklam nispor. V'kos v'sefer shulchan shloimo. Tal kol punim lo yivarchu. To vada yitu b'yom echad. V'gam al pirov einam yodem perish amilois. So, Achshav Dora. And I think in our times, Baruch Hashem, our daughters and our wives, first of all, understand Perish HaMilois. Well, I'm not very proud of this, but very many young couples, if a shaila comes up in Hilchos Shabbos or in Hilchos Natilas Yadayim, Hilchos Beis Hamazon, it's a bit of an embarrassment, but the husband will ask his wife whether she knows the halacha. And Beis Yaakov, they learn more halacha than the yeshivas, which is, I'm not very proud of that. Not that I'm not proud that the girls know halacha, I'm not proud how insufficient the boys are in halacha. But anyway, both reasons that the Mishnah Berurah quotes from Shulchan Shlomo that a woman should not say a bracha are not very, very relevant. What does he mean? Bevada yit'u b'yom echad. Yit'u or yishkechu. What does he mean? He doesn't write, they'll probably forget to count. What he writes, they'll make a mistake. And that could be interpreted in two different ways. They won't count the right day. They're going to count a mistaken day. Or they won't count in a proper nusach. Both these arguments are totally unreasonable today. It's so easy. Everybody has a luach, a calendar, or a cell phone. You know, everybody knows. Everybody knows the date. Everybody, you know, I'm an old-fashioned person, an old-timer, a dinosaur. This is where I keep my, my responsibilities, and this is what I use. I still have a notebook and a pen, and this is where I write down my schedules. But everybody knows what day it is, and everybody knows the nusach of Sefira. If you don't have it in a siddur, you have it in a bencher, you have it on your smartphone, you have it somewhere, you have it on your computer. Nobody makes a mistake in Nusach HaSefira. Nobody makes a mistake what day it is. And every girl and every woman understands Lashon HaKodesh, and she knows how to count Sefira. So I always was machanach my daughters. They all count Sefira with a bracha. But if a woman knows, judging on her track record, previous years, that she never really finishes the Sefira. And somewhere along the way, she just forgets. I agree she should not count with a bracha. Because the Shulchan Paskins, if you forget one day, you cannot continue the Sefira with a bracha. And there's a big discussion between Achronim. We don't have time to discuss it today. Whether the brachas that you already said in previous days are a bracha levatorah or not a bracha levatorah. My own personal opinion is that it's not a bracha levatorah, but many maintain that according to the halachas gedolos, that all the 49 days are connected one with the other. And if you skip one day, you could no longer continue with the bracha. Even the brachas he said in previous days would be a bracha levatorah. So men that are mechuyev are mechuyev. And if you're mechuyev, you need to say a bracha. But women are potter mesvias oima. The Ramban is a das yochid. Halacha kedivrei Rambam b'Magen Avraham. Women are potter. And if they're potter, why get into a problem of bracha levatorah? Even a suffolk bracha levatorah. But those women and girls that judging by previous years count every day, no reason they should count without a bracha. All the svaras we find in Mishnah Berurah quoting Shulchan Shleima, women should not make a bracha, are totally irrelevant today. Our daughters, our wives understand what they count, they know how to count, they know which is the proper day. So they're not mechuyev. But B'nai Ashkenaz say a bracha, even a mitzvah seishas man grama. Sephardi girls and women should not say a bracha. Because according to the B'nai Yosef, women do not say brachas and mitzvah seishas man grama. B'nai Ashkenaz need to check what happened in previous years. And if they could take it upon themselves with a reasonable level of security that they will go through the entire Sefira and not skip one night, they could say Svias Oila with a bracha, kach nera la'anius taiti. So I think this was an interesting sugya. I should have said this at the beginning of the Shia, but I say it now that the Torah we learned today should be Leilui Nishmas Reb Moshe Yaakov ben Reb Shimon, Reb Chaim ben Reb Menachem Nachum, and they should be a Meretz Yosha for my dear, dear friend, whom we so much all appreciate and thank, Dr. Lederach, for all the time and effort that Mesiras Nefesh she invests in our wonderful Beis HaMedrash. And I welcome all our new participants that have come to be with us actually in the Beis HaMedrash. Ko yitan Hashem v'ko Yosef lahagil Torah v'lahadira b'shalva b'simcha u'benachas. Looking